You're listening to In Session, where marriage and family therapist Mark Ponce sits down with your therapist and other therapists in the community to talk about who they are, why they do the work, and what keeps them coming back. This is Beyond the Intake, where we slow down and talk about the parts of therapy, identity, and being human that don't fit into a first session. Thank you for being here. Please enjoy today's episode.
Everyone, welcome back to In Session. I'm sitting here still with Joel Wadsworth. If you haven't listened to his episode on Meet Your Therapist, I'd encourage you to listen to that one now. It was a really quick rundown of who he is as a person, why he does the work, and who might be a good fit for him. This is Beyond the Intake, though, where we go a little deeper into some of the things he said there and a little deeper into what makes Joel Joel. Something I told you I would start with the question of like your journey to therapy, and we'll get there. But something we ended with in Meet Your Therapist was this idea of sitting in the suck. And I want to know a little more about what you mean by that and what that looks like when someone like me sits in the suck with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think before I went and saw my own individual therapist, I thought about sitting in the suck a lot, and just wanting to do that in session. But I'm gonna tell this, or I guess explain it through my own individual experience in therapy. But the best sessions where I changed the most fundamentally as a human being were the sessions where I was ugly crying of just snot coming out of the nose, doing the,
Your therapist got you like that, huh?
Oh yeah. And it was just like, I remember thinking like, I gotta go in the pain chamber, which is so funny because Ian actually talked about that on this podcast, like the
Yes.
pain chamber. Yeah, so maybe that's why I'm using that term. But yeah, that's what I would say is the suck, is like, if there's this saying of if you want to do, or if you want to be better, you have to do something that. Cut that out. Hold on. What? No, it's escaped my brain. Anyway, you become better by doing hard things and just sitting
There
in
it
the
is.
suck. Yeah. Yeah. What?
Even in that, I say less is more, because that made complete sense to me.
Oh,
You get better
beautiful.
when doing hard things. People just got to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What? In your sessions, is it similar?
Sitting in the suck?
Uh-huh.
Yes, and clients don't like doing it. I'll just reiterate that point. And sometimes, if I'm being honest, I don't like doing it. It's uncomfortable for me too. Like, I'm a human being, and I'm like, this is something that I know is hitting deep in the client's heart, that they may or may not be ready to talk about. And then I try to remind myself that something one of our professors in grad school said one time, Professor Dr. Gittens, once said,
The goat.
He said something along the lines of, and I can't perfect this because he was just so much wisdom in that guy. He said, it's okay to be afraid, but fear does not dictate our work. It's okay to be afraid, but fear does not dictate our work. So every time I feel this part of me that says, let's not go there today, I'm feeling tired, feeling hungry, I'm exhausted, I don't know if we're going to get out of this pain chamber. I hear him say that, and then I ask, and then clients respond in the whatever way the client will respond. So yeah, it's totally a part of the work, but it's a hard part of the work for sure.
Yeah. Oh, Gittens, man. Even when you said it, I heard it in his voice in my head. It's just, he's so good. He's just chock full of wisdom. But yeah, I think it's like, a Sherpa. Like, if we have to lead them, we're like, hey, look at that super scary mountain pass. Let's go there. And then it's like, yeah, we're both going to be afraid. And you're like, I don't even know if I'm I'm the one told you to go up there, and now it's terrible. Like,
Right.
but
Right.
there's those are the moments that I love. It's like the moments that you have to lock in, if that makes sense. Like you have to, I don't know,
Hmm.
like the lean forward. I don't know.
Yeah, the lean forward, fully attune, and
Yeah.
just accept the fact that this is going to be a hard conversation. And
Mhm.
getting the client to do the same with you is half the battle. I
Mhm.
think about this imagery you're giving of going to this scary mountain trail place, and on the way there, the anxiety is probably peaking for the both of you.
Mhm.
And it's our job and our role to settle into the anxiety and
Mhm.
reassure the client it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
Which is in turn reassuring for us, hopefully, that
Mhm.
it'll be okay. Because by the time we get there, then that readiness is there.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Hmm.
Yeah. So you said you thought about this even before you became a therapist.
Yeah.
Talk to me more about your journey to becoming a therapist then.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I was I was just pouring a coffee.
Oh, you're
We're out
good.
here.
We need that.
Had to steep. Yeah, the journey to become a therapist. Yeah, I think so I grew up in the church, which is so funny because I said I was going to talk about this because in my in our final project I was like therapists are priests and I was getting on a soapbox and but I think it is that is integral to how I became a therapist is I remember growing up in church and uh, church is a lot like therapy, crazy sentence, but where people go there because they're in search of something to help them. They're in search of healing, and connection, and purpose. And I remember even when I was, I was put into like some leadership roles early on, like when I was like 13, 14. Um, and I remember people being like down on the ground crying because of, they would be saying like, I'm so broken. Um, I'm so unworthy. I've messed up. I've done all of these things. And I felt the most alive when I was right next to those people and able to just like be there and listen to them. And so I think that was when it's excuse me, that was when it started. I
Mm,
also think I just have like a healthy unhealthy fascination with like human beings and how we operate. And I'm sure that most therapists probably do. uh but yeah, I think if we want to really get into it, um
yeah.
for me, social situations were really, really hard. When I was younger, got bullied a lot in school. Just like couldn't figure out how to operate within society, I guess.
Mm,
And or at least in a way that they would accept me. So I remember a lot of my like elementary school years and middle school years, I would study. I would look at people and be like, wait, why? Why do they get accepted and I don't? Why does their behavior create a laughter and mine creates awkwardness? Like all those things. Um, and so I think that's when it all started. And then obviously getting into therapy was like I was working a 40-hour a week data job. Sucked. Just felt lifeless, was super sad. And I actually, I wonder if I have that book. I think it might be in my therapy office, but it's called How to Be Here. Um,
huh.
and it's wow, I'm blanking on the author's name. He's great. Um, but
How
it
to be here.
Yeah, How to Be Here. Yeah.
Mm,
Um, and it talked about uh there's a Japanese concept. I'm gonna butcher it. I'm probably not even gonna say it actually. I'm gonna not say it. It's like ikigai. I don't know. But it means what is your fire? What is the thing that brings you passion? What is the thing
mm,
that opens your eyes? And so I was working at a data job when I was reading that book, and I was like, well, it sure ain't this. And so that data is not doing that for me.
Uh-huh.
But I wanted that. I didn't want to spend 40 hours of my week doing something I didn't love. And I think some people can, but I couldn't. So that's how. And then my sister was a therapist, and we talked a lot. And she was like, "Hey, I think you'd really like this." And I was like, "No." And then she's like, "I don't think you really like this." And I was like, "Well, maybe." And then the rest is history. But yeah.
Yeah. Wow. No, thanks for bringing us into your story there. It seems like there were always little bits and pieces of the human side of therapy through your life, meaning the relational person to person type. And it just took a while for it to come to fruition.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put
When,
it.
yeah, well, there are two things. I'm just going to say them out loud so I don't forget them.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned feeling alive when you're around people in pain or people who are suffering. And I'm curious about that, along
Mm-hmm.
with how often and how it sits with you when instances of bullying come up in your work with clients.
Yeah.
And when you were sharing that, I was remembering our conversation from the Meet Your Therapist episode, and you sharing how the best fits for you are often adolescence.
Mm.
And I wonder if those two things connect. So you can go whichever direction you want to right now, but we're going to answer both of them. I'm leading you to that mountain range.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. My Sherpa. Yeah, I think recency. I'll go with what the second one. But yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. A lot of the reason why I really love to work with adolescents is I really wish I would have had a therapist back then.
Mhm.
Just because I mean, if you've done any parts work, you go back, you go back to some memories, and you look at yourself in those memories. And when I did that, I remember like younger me was just so alone,
Mhm.
just like lost in the tempest, didn't know what was happening. So to have someone that would have been like, hey, here's what mental health is. Here's, it would have been really nice. But as to your question about when it comes up in session,
Mhm.
I think, yeah, there's always like no matter how much therapy I went through, there's like a visceral reaction when I hear about my client being bullied, or when bullying comes up. It's just there's you if it's happened to you, you understand it sucks. And I think for a while I wanted to shove that part down. I wanted to be like, I shouldn't feel that. I can't feel that in this session because I have to be here. But I think I'm landing more towards on like, yeah, that's that passion. That's why I'm here in this room. That's why I want to help this person because I know how much that sucks. So I think just like a little reframe there was really helpful. But as to your question, yeah, it comes up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, to have a visceral reaction and stay with it, I mean, I think shows just how much resilience you built over time, and being able to do so and hold the space for the client in front of you who's experiencing something that you relate to in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and showing them that love and passion. I mean, it's inspiring.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. And my brain is just pairing this question of being alive in someone's suffering to what we're already talking about here. How do you think those two things relate?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, I, it's so, sorry, let me get my bearings here. um, to start off, suffering is innate. No.
Suffering is part of the human experience.
Yeah. I honestly don't know. I couldn't tell you, uh, what about it like heats me up? So I mean, like we were just talking about, because I experienced it and I know how much it sucks. And you can blanket statement that, like, the deeper in empathy that you grow into, the more you relate into everyone's suffering, because we're all in a human experience and we're all suffering. And it's like, okay, my suffering doesn't look like yours, but pause. Something that I made my life mission like 4 or 5 years ago, was to gain so much understanding of people that I can't hate anybody, or that I don't hate anybody. And so I think in understanding people, you can't hate them, because you realize that we're all trying our best, and we all experience everything that life has to offer, which is like these super highs and these super lows and everything in between. So I think maybe to connect it all back to why, when people are in pain, why do I feel like this passion or feel alive? I think it's because that is the part of the human experience that I never saw, if that makes sense. Like when you're day-to-day interacting with people, they'll tell you about their highs and maybe a little bit about their lows, but not a lot, right? And so it was like a window into, whoa, there's so much more to being a human. And there's like this ugly side of it all that sucks. But that's also where the most healing and growth comes from. So I don't know. I hope that made sense as I connected that all.
It's making a ton of sense. And I was just thinking to myself, we're about 15 minutes into this episode and you're already dropping some heat, my friend. I wish I had a little soundboard. Sorry. Let me just ease the the tension in this space, the heaviness, with a little comedy.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Everybody knows my tells now. So as you were talking, I was wondering where you feel like hate fits into the human experience. And what I mean by that, how does hate impact a person positively? And how does hate impact a person negatively?
Oh, that's a killer question. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I think how can it impact someone? That's good. I think like hate, we say don't hate, and I think that's great. Love is the opposite of hate. We say, please love more, hate less. If everyone did that, the world would be better. But
yeah,
I think there are no bad parts. So if I were to approach it that way, I would say that hate, it signals that something doesn't align with you. It signals that something is against your values, or that something potentially is that's pushing on your values. Like I try not to hate anybody, right? But I mean, if someone like beat up my mom, like I would start hating that person, but it's because they infringed on my values of family, and my mom is the best person in all of existence. You can't do that to her, right? She's so nice. But I think it's like it signals that something is awry, something's up, and I think anger in general is similar. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think I agree in that. I once heard this thing. I forgot where. It might have been on another podcast by someone with more wisdom than me. But they said hate. Well, they were talking about anger, actually. I think you and I might have talked about this before, but anger, the feeling itself is valid and understandable and is allowed. And like you're saying, comes from probably a very informed place, whether it ties with values or worldview, culture, whatever you have it. So the feeling itself is valid. The expression of that anger, the expression of that hate, that falls a lot more in our choice than we think. And if we choose to express hate in a generally negative way, whatever you might define that, then yeah, we're making that conscious choice. And what I mean is, like, think about a situation. You and I were in a private room and we're arguing and we're really getting into it. I'm cussing you out. This would never happen, by the way. I'm
every day in grad
I'm
school though.
right. It's just projection of everything we were experiencing. I'm cussing you out. You're doing the same to me. And then let's say our moms walk into the room. Right away, we'd be able to shift our demeanor and say, "Oh, hey, we're just having a conversation. We'll be right out for brunch after this." And that in itself, our ability to shift like that shows how much choice we have over the expression of anger or hate. Because if it was totally out of our control, then we wouldn't be able to shift like that. And this happens across the board in so many different contexts. So as far as like positive impact of hate or anger, I think, yeah, it gives us an awareness of what's aligned with us and what's not. Negative impacts is that often we get so enamored by hate and anger that it feels like it's controlling our behaviors when maybe it's not.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah, I think we can't really control our thoughts and our emotions. We can only control our actions. So we can't stop hate from the emotion of hate or the thought of hate coming into our system, but we can control how we display it out. Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, like, from this point of understanding, sometimes it's cathartic to express hate in a hateful way. And that's not me encouraging that.
Right.
I think that's just me being real, where it's like, yeah, sometimes the way it feels in the moment to get that energy out is to express it in a hateful way. And then what matters is that we come back and take responsibility for what we've done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love what you said, that like expressing hate or anger can be really cathartic. I think that's why there's there's like the demolition rooms where you can go and just like smash a car or but I remember working with someone and they were younger, and they were like, "Oh, just every time I get upset with my brother, all I want to do is punch him in the face." And that's what the parents had brought the kid in for. And so I remember we're talking about, okay, yeah, it feels good when you're so worked up and you have so much energy, because anger is a high energy emotion. It's like that energy has to go somewhere. Where is it going to go? So we worked on it, and we were like, okay, instead of punching your brother, what if you went and go punch a pillow for like 5 minutes or whatever it may be, or just go to town on your bed and just kicking it and jumping on it and screaming, and just as kind of the first step of moving away from an action that you don't want, but just recognizing like, hey, that we're not going to shove this feeling down. We're not going to say don't have this, but just what happens if we did something else about it. Yeah.
It's honoring the stance of this emotion or this part of you, honoring like that is there, but also, yeah, maybe doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few times this parts language, and for anybody out there who might be listening right now, who might be unfamiliar with parts work or even internal family systems, how would you describe that in a way that's digestible?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Once again, shout out Dave Baird. He's the one that got all of our cohort drinking the Kool-Aid on IFS.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the elevator pitch, if you will, is that um, we all have something that's called a core self. Um, that core self is the person that came up with IFS, Mr. Dick Schwartz, PhD, Mr. Schwartz himself. He would say that the core self is like the enlightened being. It's the Jesus walking heaven on earth. It's the Buddha under the tree. It's being able to feel everything with no judgment and being like the truest version of yourself. That's what core self is. And we all have that within us. And that because of everything that's happened to us in this human experience, we've developed these parts to adapt to the world, these different hats that we wear, these different, some people like the computer analogy, like the different modes that we run, the different codes, the different
Hmm.
programs that we run to handle situations. And those parts of ourselves, we want to they are trying their best, and also they might be, how do I core self and the parts, we got to be buddies. Your
Mm.
own core
Mhm.
self and the parts of yourself, you got to be homies, you got to be talking, you got to develop a relationship. And a lot of times people come in and it's very distant. It's a very distant relationship between them and their parts. So to develop those relationships and learn how to work as a system, learn how to work as a family, internal family systems,
Um,
is a lot of the work of IFS, and it looks different in session, but that's like the theoretical, I guess. I don't know. Well,
yeah.
would you add anything?
I don't know if I'd add much to that. I think you encapsulated it great. I mean, there are the different parts of us that come out often have our best interest in mind,
Hmm.
even when we can't see that.
Mhm.
So think about our anxious parts or our
Yeah.
angry parts or whatever, right? And those can feel so disheartening, overwhelming, and we just want to get rid of the feeling. And
Hmm.
yet these parts of us, when we really slow down to them, just want to protect us in some way.
Hmm.
And it's our job as therapists in the parts workspace to really explore that and honor, like you were saying earlier, honor the fact that these parts have a job and they're just trying to
Hmm.
do it. And
Hmm.
maybe they're just doing it in a way that is in the best interest, but doesn't actually benefit directly the client themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's I had a client one time describe it as very woo-woo, There's- which it can be. Yeah, and I don't think it's for everybody. I really don't.
Mhm.
But I also think that even if I'm not doing IFS work in my sessions, I'm kind of doing IFS work in my sessions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. Where do you feel self-compassion fits into this whole thing? Even just beyond IFS, just therapy itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Self-compassion. That's I we've talked about this before. Yeah, self-compassion. Um, whew, yeah. I the first word that the first word that comes to mind for me is like grace. Um, I think self-compassion is just offering yourself grace to make mistakes. And there's I mean in my own IFS work, self-compassion, how do you be self-critical and self-compassionate? Um, how do you because compassion seems to be like overwhelmingly positive. So how can you say something bad about yourself if you're trying to be self-compassionate? But I think that was a lot of my initial work in therapy, and the big difference or at least what worked for me, is that saying objectively, okay, that might have been a mess up, or oh, you might have done that wrong, is fine. Then there's shame, which is shame comes in and is like, how dare you? Like, you obviously knew better. Why didn't you're an idiot. What are you doing? If you can't tell, I know my shame voice really well. And so I think self-compassion is learning to just stop at, hey, that was a wrong action. And be good and offer grace. And I don't know, that's what it is to me. Is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah, totally. And your shame voice sounds like mine, so I relate to you in that. Why do you think so many people struggle with shame or being critical with themselves?
Yeah. That's where do I want to go with that? I think yeah, I think when self-criticism isn't enough, when we can be self-critical and say, hey, this was wrong, whatever it may be, and we continue to do that thing, like, say for example, I really don't want to run a red light. I don't know. It's just something trivial, right? And it's like, okay, don't run that red light. But after you run it a few more times, even though you say, hey, I did that was wrong, and I don't want to do it again, and then you do it again, I think the only response is to say, okay, well, why don't we just dial up the intensity of making sure that you were wrong? Because if you understand that was wrong, you won't do it again, right? And so shame steps in and is like, okay, I'm gonna really drill this home. I'm gonna hurt you so that you understand that this was a bad thing. It's like spanking a child. I don't know, like, like punishment. Yep. So therefore you don't do that thing again. And I think we do that with ourselves, but there's no like upper echelon that we can hit. We can just keep dialing that up. And honestly, people that come in and they're so like, especially I think depression is so built in like shame and sadness. And to hear what people with depression think about themselves, you can tell that they like that dial has just kept going up because they kept making mistakes. So they're like, okay, I'm going to go. And anyway, so what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, more so just want to add to what you're saying and it works often. And I think that's the hard part of that cycle or shame spiral, whatever you want to call it, where the reasoning for that part of us is that if, like you're saying, if we add the intensity, then we'll finally learn. And often we do.
Yeah.
And then our brain gets acquainted with, okay, if we want something to get done in a good way, then it has to pair with shaming ourselves. And like you're saying, if the dial just keeps going up and up and up, then we start seeing things like major depression, or then we start seeing things that really impact our daily functioning.
Yeah, I think you're so right that it works. Like in our system, we reward it for working. Like if dialing up the shame worked to make us stop that behavior, we're like, yes, more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I tell my clients all the time that the brain is, and this is from this, I'm not going to claim this as my own, but Ian would tell me this all the time. Ian Redfield, first episode of the podcast. If you haven't listened, listen to now. Anyways, he would always share with me this sense that or remind me that our brain is wired for survival, not to make us feel good. Right. And if our brain learns that to survive hard instances is to shame ourselves, then it's going to keep doing that because it believes that that's the only way we'll survive, or that's the only way we'll be good, or that's the only way we'll be accepted, fill in the blank. And maybe part of that is true,
Mm-hmm.
but the consequences of it, maybe it just doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Oh,
What do you think?
yeah. No, absolutely. And Ian is incredible. He's just he'll just drop he's just such like a nice, easygoing, like you get laughs with Ian all the time, and then he would just randomly just bam, just hit you with stuff like that. He's awesome.
Yeah, he
Um
would just like send a WWE edit and then go straight into some existential things about life.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, shout out Ian. But yeah, I think, yeah, because when you initially asked about shame, I was thinking like, well, we had to, if you go back, how our brain functions is based upon, they say like the primal, whatever, the lizard brain. The lizard brain says we have to fit in, we have to do these things, we have to fit in to survive. And if we're not fitting in, then shame comes in and just says, how dare you? You better shape
Yeah.
up. Yeah. I think our two shame parts should go have a beer together so that they can they
Yeah.
can get over what they've been on.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'll just book a flight to Spokane and just go grab that beer now.
Yeah.
How do you think shame fits into work when you're doing work with relationships, whether that be couples or family?
Oh yeah. Um when there's a No Bad Parts, the IFS book.
Mhm.
I remember it had a section. It walks you through some exercises to do within yourself to get used to the framework. And one of them is take someone in your life that made you feel upset, or that you have like an issue with, or whatever what that looks like. And then he led, well, I'm going to say me because I was reading. He led me through this part work, and I realized that the reason why I was upset with this person was actually because I had my own part that like reflected theirs, and I didn't like the way that they behaved when that part was acting, because I thought the way I was acting or how I would handle that situation and how my part handles that is like, I think it's the best way, and how dare you do it differently. And so,
Interesting.
yeah.
Hold on. I feel like we just hit some foliage on our way to this mountain range. Um, if you can, and if you're comfortable, I mean, I'd love
Mhm,
to knock some of this down and
mhm.
really understand what you're saying here about parts reflecting our partner's part. What do you
Yeah.
mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just do the example. I remember it so vividly. I was actually on a walk up on the South Hill. Anyway, um, but a friend of mine, um, they had done something in a social situation, and it made me feel. I was like, oh, why did you do that? Like, oh, and I felt like embarrassed for them.
Hmm.
Um, and for that, I was like being critical of them. Um, and so but what I realized was that it was because I think I have such shame around social mishaps. I really like, I will be constant. I used to constantly analyze social situations so that I didn't make those missteps. And so my shame part was like knocking on the door when my friend was doing that, because it's like I'm already so aware that I don't want to make a mishap, and shame's gonna be right there saying like, hey.
Uh,
Um, and so what I had to realize is that their their actions are not my shame part's responsibility. um,
mm,
and so within relationships, I think when our parts step in and they try to take over, and they try to say, hey, you know how you treat yourself? We're gonna treat our partner the same way. You know how you're super self-critical? Well, if your partner makes a mistake, then that self-critical part is going to be knocking on the door, because they see the behavior that they see within yourself, and yeah. So that's how I don't know if I'm
oh,
explaining it great. I haven't. This has been an internal thought more than an external one.
you're explaining it so well. I have nothing to add to that. I think it's very clear now.
Mm.
It's a lot of reflection of the other reflection of our own parts projecting on the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our job to understand what parts of us are activated there in order to, I'm making a jump here, but in order to connect in our relationship. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think to expand upon that, if you've ever done couples IFS work, I've just touched on it a little bit in my own practice, but when we become vulnerable, like in IFS, if you're doing an IFS thing on yourself, you find a part, like a version of yourself that was like hurt or whatever it may be, and you try to walk in with as much like compassion and understanding for that part so that you can develop a connection. Well, partners, like in marriage counseling, or I guess couples counseling, when partners respond to vulnerability really well, it like breaks down our walls. It like diffuses situations is when someone gets vulnerable. If the partner is in a place, then they respond to it really well. And IFS is inherently vulnerable. You have to get vulnerable because you're trying to go to the most vulnerable parts of yourself. So I remember there was a fight between a couple, and I just spent time with one of the members of the couple, and just we kind of did the IFS thing, and we got into all of it, and he just started crying. He was like, I was so alone. I can't believe that I just, all I wanted was someone to like hug me. And I watched the partner that was like upset with them before completely change their demeanor. And when he said, I just needed someone to hug me, she hugged him. And I was like,
Oh my God.
But I think so in response to like how this works relationally, I think that's also something I've seen.
Wow. I was just thinking if I had one of those soundboards again, I would just click the button and it goes, "Aw."
You gotta get it.
I know, right? Jeez. Somebody sponsor the podcast and get
Come
me a
on,
soundboard. Come on. No, I love what you're saying though about when people can accept and hold space for vulnerability. It's transformative. You know, it allows our deeper parts and attachment wounds to be like, this person's a safe person. And I think when couples come in my space too, I think when couples go to therapy in general, there have just been so many emotional wounds throughout the nature of their relationship or throughout their life, where they've just developed conscious or very unconscious mistrust for their partner. Emotional mistrust, and getting back to this point of safety does involve getting vulnerable. And that's the sitting in the suck.
Hey, full circle moment. Yeah. Wow. I love the way that you think about therapy. I think every time that you talk, it's like, oh. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Oh man. We're both a few years into our therapy practice, and including our time in the pain chamber of our master's program and after.
True.
One time you mentioned to me over the phone that you've experienced this maturity as a therapist. And I took a mental note of that, and a physical one that sits right in front of me. Because I note take on our phone calls. Sorry. Anyways, tell me about tell me about what that maturity as a therapist has looked like for you.
First of all, I think you're the most intentional person I've ever met. That's amazing that you be keeping those notes of our phone calls. Oh, what was your question? wait, maturity.
You got caught up in flirting with me. That you
Sam, stay out. No. Yeah, maturity as a therapist. Oh man. I think it's a process that starts when you get in your first session and it ends in the last session you ever do. So I think it's going to be a whole life maturing process. But what it's looked like so far in these first few years outside of grad school, I think I wanted to like really force my own agenda. Um, it's so funny because, bright-eyed, bushy-tail first session walk in, you don't know what you're doing. There's no way you can know what you're doing in your first session. And so I remember, the things that I would fall back on was just Carl Rogers himself, the tenets, authenticity, genuineness, and positive regard. And I would say those like a mantra to myself over and over again before. I remember like sitting in the or like pacing in the room that's close to where we would have our clinical sessions in grad school. And I would just be like, you just got to be authentic. You got to be genuine. And you got to have positive regard for them. You got to be authentic, and, just over and over. And I think that's what the first part of therapy was I didn't really know how to handle a lot of situations. And so I would just fall back on those three things. As long as I did that, I was like, all right, that's a fine session. But I think there was a point, and it hit about like the 2 or 3 month mark for me of first doing sessions. And I realized, man, that stuff is amazing, but sometimes people actually need like more than that. They need some form of structure. They need some theory. They need like a trajectory. They need a I don't know. Anyway, I realized that, man, I got to start learning some stuff. I got to start learning things I can bring into session when they're like, hey, this is happening. Please help me. And, you can sit there and say, oh, well, we can process the fact that you want help. You think that this is important, but you can only do that so much before they're like, no, dude, help me. And so then I think I focused on that. And then, getting out of grad school, I'm trying to navigate the balance between those two. And then I sit in my first session where people are paying like $160 to be there. And then that changed the way I was like, oh my gosh, I have to be professional. I have to be Mr. Know-it-all. I have to be academic because that's why they're paying me so much money, is because I got this degree, all of these things. And we're billing for insurance now. So we have to have a treatment plan. Each session has to be knocking on all of those goals of the treatment plan. We have to be saying things in session that relate to that treatment plan, and so I think for a while I lost center of like, hey, I'm just a human being. The person across from me is just a human being. Let's sit here and find some peace. So I think maturing is realizing how to strike the balance between being a professional and being a therapist and being a human being. That's what I would say, at least.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting it really beautifully. I think this concept of being a human being has come up almost in every one of my podcast episodes. Probably every single one, if I could confidently say that. And it must sound like a broken record now, but it's so real. It's like, yes, people come to us because we are trained, we have the degree, and objectively, we know how to help. And people also come, maybe more unconsciously, for the subjective nature of who we are. And often, I think the hard truth really is getting away from the idea that they're paying for our expertise, but more so just paying for our time.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
And clients don't necessarily need to make that distinguish. They don't really need to distinguish that themselves. I think it's helpful for us therapists when we feel that pressure to perform, to remember that it is a balance between the two. And we don't have to lean so far one way or lean so far the other, because that's just not authentic, genuine,
Mm,
or not really a positive regard either.
Yeah. I think it goes to show that maybe you just surround yourself with people that are concerned with human being and being human beings with human beings. You attract
Right.
the people. You attract those people. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, so much. There's so many nuances of the work.
Mm,
Something I just read in my notes from one of our calls that related to just one of the last things we were talking about um before we got into maturity, that I don't want to leave out of the podcast,
mm,
is you said on this call, in this world, it is hard to have people close to you who can validate you. That is just a scarce thing in our lives.
mm, mhm,
Um, Lots of wisdom there, and
mm.
that came out of your mouth. Can you just share more about that?
Mm. It's so funny because I've recognized when we do our calls that sometimes you take a little bit to respond. And I always thought that you were thinking about like a response. And now I know you're taking notes. Cotton 4K. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Yeah, I think I was probably with that sentence that you just read. I think I was um a lot of like 90% of the people I work with, one of their most I don't know if it's the people that find me that that they want me to be their therapist, but they one of their biggest presenting concerns is that they're just lonely, or that they just feel alone, or
Mm,
um, the amount of times that I've heard in my sessions, like, oh, I've never told anyone this, or I don't feel comfortable sharing this with anyone else, or I only have my wife, my friend, and you. That's all I talk to about this stuff.
mm,
So I think it's just, and we can go. I mean, we can spend all day talking about why this is. But I think just in general, right now, people that are experiencing hardships are lonely, and it's hard to have people in your life that you feel comfortable with being that vulnerable, or sharing the things that don't make you look good, or whatever it may be. So yeah, I
yeah.
guess that's what I was kind of thinking.
Why do you think loneliness is such a big part of life right now for many people?
Oh, there's so much to that question. um, Society. No. um, yeah, hmm, I'll go the more human answer, that it's just uh it's easy to be alone. Um, it's the path of least resistance if you think about it. Um, if you did
Hmm.
nothing, you would be alone. And it requires effort to not be. And not saying, obviously there's people that are lonely and they're putting in tons of effort and they're still, I'm not trying to um, unvalue that or devalue that. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, I think when we're at our worst loneliness, we typically want to be alone, or we go hide in a cave. um, so, and I don't know. So that's what I would say. I think I could go into a lot of different things there, but I think that that's the one I'll go with.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard it similarly put as a loneliness epidemic in the world right now,
Mm.
or pandemic. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter right now. But, and I agree with everything you're saying in that it's not to dismiss the people who are doing the hard work and
Mhm.
still feeling alone, because that in itself is its own unique experience. And I think there's connection to so many other people's lives we have right now via the internet and social media, and media in general, that adds to this loneliness that many people feel. Because there's often the thought of my life should be like this person's life. Why aren't I doing this? Why haven't I done this yet? And it leads people into the shame spiral. It leads them into the to loneliness feeling. And it's hard. It's hard to feel validated in that, when other people seem to have it all together.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, the coming of virtual age has, I think, yeah, it's a big, I don't even know how to approach it. I think it's so, yeah, and it's obviously contributing to our loneliness, and it's like, what do we do? What do we do about it? Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, and it's hard to know if there's even just one thing to do about that. And it's like what you're saying, the path of least resistance being loneliness, I think carries a lot more fruit. And I really hope that listeners let that one digest. Because I'm comparing it to social media, and sometimes even I'll be honest, like sometimes the thoughts I have when I see other people's lives in a very glorified way, where I'm like, it's much easier for me to to interestingly share their joy in whatever they're doing than go out and make that for myself, because there's a whole lot of uncertainty, there's a whole lot of ambiguity, in finding joy sometimes in life, that it's easier to just live in someone else's life for a little bit. And that reinforces this cycle of loneliness, I think, because to our brains, that's an enjoyable thing, that's enough.
Yeah.
But over time, probably unsustainable.
Right. Yeah. Wow. And it made me think of how when you were saying that there's, watching someone else also gives you the joy, and you're like, okay, maybe that joy is enough, so I'm not going to go do it for myself. And I think that's why it's also, social media or whatever you want to call it, that it's been described as like vapid or shallow, because you can get that joy, but because you didn't do it, you also didn't experience all the sucky parts of it and all of the work and the time that it took to get there. Like for me, I always get caught up. If I see someone living in a van, man, I'm on Facebook Marketplace looking at Astro van prices. They give me every time. But to see those pictures of people, they're on a beach and the sun is setting and they have, and they have a dog laying on their lap, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that fills me with so much joy. That's beautiful. And their life must be amazing. But they didn't see all the times that like the dog pooped in their van, or or their van broke down on the side of the road, or they had to figure out where they were sleeping that night. And it's like those moments of joy that they're getting, because they had to go through the full experience to get there, it's deeper and it's more rich. Whereas like if you're just looking at it and on your screen, then it's like this shallow thing. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense. Do you feel like a requirement for joy is sadness or struggle?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually, I probably shouldn't bring this. Well, I'm reading the Tao Te Ching, and I don't want to speak like I understand it in the slightest, because it's this wisdom text, and there's no way I understand it. But the whole concept is that, if there's happiness, there has to be sadness. If there's dark, there has to be light. And that if you only focus on one of them is when you become imbalanced, and finding the balance between them. And so, yeah, I think I would agree with you that I don't think there is. You can't. The experience of joy necessitates the experience of sadness, if that makes sense.
Can't have one without the other, at least not to the most genuine and fullest extent.
Yeah. And it was really, I brought that actually in a session one time, because this amazing human being that I work with, they've put in so much work. They were at like the most, I think potentially the most depressed person I've ever seen, and now they're like, it was, let's learn how to wash the dishes. Like let's wash one dish this week. That was your homework. And then it was, excuse me. And now they're like fully functioning. They have an apartment. They have a job. They're like making connections with people,
Wow.
and yeah, just incredible. Um, and so for a while in therapy, they were feeling really good. And they were like, oh my, they're just hitting milestone after milestone, and it doesn't seem like they're slowing down. And then they slowed down. Um, and they were really beating themselves up about it. They were like, I can't believe I don't know how to do this, or I can't believe I can't do this, or I'm not doing this, whatever this may be. And I remember we started talking about how, like, hey, because you have been doing so good and you learn these things, inherently you have to have moments where you're not going to know what to do and you're not doing these things. Like
Mhm.
there will always be a shift back. Um, and that's okay. And it's part of the push and pull of life. And to be like centered in that push and pull is kind of what our work is like turning into right now. Ew, I'm still seeing them. So, but yeah,
Mhm.
so I think that's how it kind of like applies to therapy.
Mm. Oh, what a beautiful relationship that y'all must have built together,
He's
to make
he's
changes
amazing.
like that.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. Wow. And in your own personal life, where have you seen joy really express itself as a result of knowing what struggle looked like in that situation?
Yeah. Wow. Um, well, I think there's a lot of different scenarios that I can point to. Um, one of them is a scary mountain pass, and one of them is not. So,
What decision are you gonna make here, Joel?
let's ride the wave. Yeah, I think so. My wife Lily, um, we almost separated at one point. Things were really hard. Things were really bad, and I remember I moved out. Um, and it was not a fun time by any means. Um,
Yeah.
and so that was like the lowest. It was just, like we were probably like three mistakes from separating for good, right? Um, and we decided to stick together. We decided to work on things. We went to couples therapy, and that was amazing. And we really started working on our relationship, and eventually we moved back in with each other, and then we got married. Um, and I'll say, getting married that day was an unreal, and like looking at the ring on that finger, and her in her wedding dress. That level of joy, and not trying to take away from people that have had a good relationship the whole time, obviously, but like
Yeah.
because we had such like we hit that low and we worked to bring ourselves up out of it. Not only I think is our relationship much stronger for it, but that joy that we got of like, yeah, we did this. Like we're getting married right now. We're standing in the grass. Our toes are in the grass because we got married barefoot. So yeah, I think that level of joy from the suck, it just very good.
Mm. Well, yeah, I think about your wedding day because I was also present on that day.
Yes,
Gotta let
sir.
the people know.
True.
Truly a privilege, and it was so full of love. And I appreciate you even coming on this platform and sharing your story here, because I'm sure so many people um, can relate to it, and me sitting across from you can also relate that sometimes love feels the most joyous, the most loving after times of struggle. And yeah, just leave it at that. Oof, man, I feel like we could talk so long about all of these things therapy. I mean, like I said in the Meet Your Therapist episode, we've already talked about a lot regarding the
Mm,
life regarding the human experience, and we can go
mhm.
on and on. And we have our side project to get to
Ew.
after the recording of this
True.
project or this podcast.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if you'd be comfortable giving just a short little plug for what we got going on the side.
TTG. TTG.
Get the
Yeah.
soundboard.
TTG. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Well, me and Mark decided we started gaming together in grad school, just as a way to connect and to get our minds off of grad school. And we have a lot of fun doing it. And so we thought, man, this would be fun to put out content of just two therapists gaming, talking about therapy, but also in like a casual, fun setting. So yeah, and so we came up with TTG, two therapists gaming. And it's been great so far. It's early on, but it's great.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful uh, project that Joel and I got going on. We figured we do this enough, and we're decent at the game we play, so we figured why not mix a little bit of the both and give ourselves a consistent way to connect with each other, since we don't live close to each other, and have conversations like the one we're having today on the podcast while games are going on too.
Yeah.
So if that is something that as you're listening to this, that you might be interested in, we
Check it
are
out.
part-time streamers and stream because we're full-time therapists.
Ew.
And we stream every Saturday around 9 a.m. So we'd love for you to tune in there. And we're so grateful. I'm so grateful you're tuning in to this podcast. Joel, at the end of every one of my Beyond the Intake episodes, I end with 3 questions I call doorknob questions. I'm sure you're familiar with that term.
Yep.
The questions that clients ask or tell you at the end of session that you just don't have time for, and that's what we're gonna do here now. Don't have time for and want to get back to, of course.
Of course.
So I got 3 questions for you. I'd love for you to answer them as short or as long as possible. The first question is related to our conversation now. What's a small joy in your life that you've been loving recently?
Yeah. So I've been switching to Apple Music while trying to. I don't know if I'm gonna do it. I've been on Spotify for like 15 years. It's too ingrained in me. But it like had all of my old library music from when I had like an iPod Nano. And so songs I forgot about, songs I haven't heard in like 15 plus years,
Oh my
showed
gosh.
up. And so I got to go a trip down memory lane and listen to what I was listening to when I was like 12 and like 15. And so it was awesome. And it's just brought me so much joy. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. I could see the joy on your face right now. Okay, second question for you is, what is one thing, one lesson about life or about being a human that your clients have taught you?
Ooh, yeah. That's a great one that my clients have taught me. Laughter is necessary in every aspect of life. Even in the deepest grief work I've ever done, laughter is always necessary. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it just reminds us that we're human. I don't know. Which is such a cheesy therapist response. But it feels good. And yeah.
Yeah. Don't gotta sugarcoat what's real. It's just part of the human experience.
Yes, sir.
And even in suffering, we can feel joy.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you could share something with your younger self, a young part of you, what's one message that you think he would need to hear?
Buy Bitcoin. I'm just kidding. No. Yeah. I remember in the all of the therapy I did, one of my go-to phrases when dealing with my younger self was, "Buddy, it's okay. Like it's okay." So I think I would just sit next to younger version of myself and just be like, it's okay. Like, it's just okay. So yeah, that's probably what I would do.
Okay. Well, Joel, thank you for giving me your time, giving my guest. Whoa, wow, my stomach's getting hungry. I'm slipping over my words. Thank you so much for your time this morning and for blessing our listeners' ears with your presence. I think people really need to know who you are, and I'm glad that they've taken the time and you've taken the time to really let yourself be known. So if this episode resonates with you, I'd love to hear about it. Put it down in my comment section on Instagram, or reach out to me at insessionpod@outlook.com. I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you want to connect with Joel, his information and contact is in the show notes as always. And thank you so much for being on In Session, my friend.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, and you're very good at it. So, yeah, looking forward to listening to all your upcoming podcasts.
Hey, more content soon.
Yeah, especially the solo ones.
Yeah, right. Now we made it formal. I haven't talked about that publicly yet. Now I'm gonna cut it out.